everyone, it's Lisa Stenz. Welcome to video number 6, the last in the series of my Distress Oxide Inks videos. And today I'm going to show you how to do the Joseph's Coat technique. For my first card, I'm just going to take some ink and rub it on a piece of white daisy cardstock. And I'm doing a fall themed card for this first one. So I wanted to choose some fall themed colors. So I'm going to be mixing some spiced marmalade, some mowed lawn, and I think I'm going to throw in a little bit of abandoned coral and maybe some antique linen in there. And I'm just mixing the colors. I'm just putting them in random spots, and they don't have to be blended perfectly, but I wanted to just have different colors in different areas. So I'm going ahead now and I'm heat setting it so that it is nice and dry. And once that sheet's dry, I'm going to random stamp some of these really pretty leaves from the Textured Leaves stamp set. And I'm going to random stamp it on this colorful background that I just created with some Versamark ink. And I'm just choosing different leaves and turning them different directions, and I'm going to fill up that page. Once I've stamped all of my leaves, I am going to sprinkle some clear detailed embossing powder on top. And I just want to make sure that I get all the excess off. You can turn it over and flick the back like I did here, and that just gets all the excess off. Clear off my workstation, and I heat set it with the heat tool. And you can see as it's melting, it just turns nice and shiny. And I don't know, there's something satisfying about heat setting embossing powder and watching it turn clear and shiny. Then you just want to set it aside for a second and make sure it cools before we do this next step. And once it's cooled, you're going to take your black soot ink and rub it directly on top. And I found this was the easiest way to cover the entire piece of cardstock quickly. And once you've got a good amount of ink on it, then you can go ahead with your blending tool and fill in the rest and smooth it out. And so that's what I'm doing here. And as I mentioned in a couple of the past videos, you want to make sure you have a piece of scrap paper that you can put down so that you don't get fingerprints on it. And once you're done putting the black soot on, then you're going to take a dry paper towel and go over those embossed leaves. And you'll see how they just pop beautifully when you wipe the ink off of the embossed areas. This is an emboss resist like we've done before. But this is just so beautiful with the black in the background. I just love this technique. Now I want to make some leaves to embellish the card. So I started with a piece of cinnamon cardstock, and I'm using the same ink colors that I used on the background to just add a little bit more texture and color to this cardstock. Then I'm going to take my heat tool and attempt to heat set this, and you're going to find out in a minute that I didn't heat it long enough, but it turned out to be a pretty cool mistake. Now I'm going to stamp some of the leaves on top of this background that I just made using some black soot ink. I'm going to sprinkle some more of that clear detail embossing powder on top, thinking that I'm just going to be embossing the leaves, but I realized at this point that I didn't dry the background well enough and the embossing powder stuck to the entire thing. So I decided to just go with it and see what happens. And so I went ahead and added more powder to just cover the entire piece of cardstock there. And I'm going to go ahead and heat set this and hope for the best. As I'm watching this powder melt, I'm thinking this is going to be pretty cool. So what's happening is the entire piece is getting shiny and clear. So I decided I'm going to just go ahead and keep those bottom two leaves and trim them out once they cool off and use them on my card. So now I'm going to build the card base, and the actual base is going to be from a piece of cinnamon cardstock. Create a thin mat with some white daisy cardstock and then add the pattern piece that we created right on top. I cut a piece of white daisy cardstock with the stitched brackets thin cuts die and stamped one of the sentiments from the Every Bit of Wonderful Operation Smile stamp on top. And I decided I wasn't sure if I was going to put it in the middle of the card, and I thought it looked nice off to the right, so I trimmed a little section off of the right side and adhered that to the card with some foam tape. I cut out those embossed leaves that we just created with the coordinating thin cuts dies, and I added a little sprig of the silver embellishing thread. And a little tip is if you take the embellishing thread and wrap it around like 2 or 3 fingers a few times and cut it with your scissors, then you can take a small piece of washi tape to hold it together. So that finished up my card, and I think even with the little mistake that I made, it turned out okay, and I'm actually really loving this technique. So here's another card that I created with the same technique using more bright colors. And it's just such a fun technique. I think I'm going to use it more often. Thanks for joining me for this video series. I hope you found some inspiration. And if you'd like even more inspiration, feel free to hop on over to my blog at lisascreativecorner.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.